This is Desalinity. It's time for another old NME read-through. Remember, we're looking 33 years back into the past. So this time around, we'll be looking at the NME from the 7th of October, 1989. Check back a few of the other episodes if you want to see any more of this content. Yep, this is exactly what we'll be looking at today. As you can see, it has the lovely Kate Bush on the cover. Anyway, let's not waste time. Let's have a look at the NME. So yes, the NME from the 7th of October, 1989. As you can see, Kate Bush is the cover star for this week's issue, tying in with her Sensual World album and single release. Yeah, also featured this week we have The Wonder Stuff and revisiting a classic Clash interview. A couple of other names at the top there, the EPMD, George Clinton. Joe Strummer gets another mention down the side there. Let's get into it. Okay, yes, the news pages. So the usual tour stuff, all that kind of thing. A few little news stories jumping out. Let's see. Simple Minds donating some of the proceeds from their Belfast child single to help out the family of Brian Keenan, the Iranian hostage. Yeah, a new Morrissey single, Ouija Board. I guess that counted as news back then. And yeah, isn't this odd? Look at this at the bottom. Anarchy in the Ukraine. How things change. Apparently, the Ukrainian Young Communist League tried to stop certain Western records being played in discos in public places because they were considered ideologically harmful. Yes. Their list is quite interesting. It includes AC/DC, the B-52s, the Stranglers, the Sex Pistols, Madness, the Clash, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. Yeah, I think there's a few of those that you could consider harmful. I don't know about ideologically harmful, though. Anyway, moving on. Yes, more news. What do we have here? Yeah, new Mudhoney album there coming out. And some news that Tad and Nirvana were forced to cancel one of their gigs on their current tour because they were trying to fit in a Peel session. What else? Brian Wilson suing his father for lots of money for Beach Boys royalties. And The Who doing some more live Tommy shows at the Royal Albert Hall. Not a whole lot else there. And the US news page. Again, a few things in there probably. Oh, the Ringo Starr piece is quite interesting. I'll just read that. Musicians who worked on the Ringo Starr album that the former Beatle is trying to prevent from being released deny Starr's claim that the musicians drank a lot during the recording sessions. He seemed to be real sharp to me, says Bobby Wood, keyboards player for the 1987 sessions. I noticed that he wasn't on key, but you know, Ringo's never been on key. He's just not that great a singer. Well, there you go. That's news for you. Let's leave that behind and move on to Thrills. Yes, the usual kind of jokey pages. Someone sent in a photo because they're called Tracy Chapman. We have some Bad Bowling lyrics at the top there. And we have Bobby Gillespie's favourite things in Material World this week. Some jokey pictures of Ian Astbury there as well. I know it's in Big Mouth. There are some interesting quotes this week. I'll just read the one which is from Prince there at the bottom, which says Michael Jackson's album was only called Bad because there wasn't enough room on the sleeve for Pathetic. Moving on. These are the on pages. Usual up and coming small features on things. This week there seems to be a big push by Steve Lamacq, who's editing on as usual, to create a kind of a new genre label movement called Fraggle Pop. I do remember this. It's very, very slim premise that it's based on, but he was basically trying to club together bands like Mega City 4, Senseless Things, Midway Still, Snuff, bands like that, kind of poppy, punky, melodic, hardcore-y type bands under this label Fraggle Pop. I think he'd been watching Fraggle Rock and just saw, you know, all the Fraggles jumping around at the start and being thrown about, and just managed to kind of tie that into the atmosphere of the gigs that these bands performed at. Yeah, it never really took off. Nice try, Steve. There's also a feature there, Think Yank at the top, about kind of some of the up-and-coming US bands that would be touring the UK this autumn. And there's some interesting names in there. There's All, Das Damen, Bitch Magnet, Fire Party, Ball, Buffalo Tom, and who else? Morphines. I remember they were Peel favourites for a very short period. And a couple of features there as well, interviewing Soverhead and the Cataran. So I turn over this big Bob Dylan Oh Mercy ad and keep going until we get to an interview with Daniel Lenoir, who'd produced Dylan's Oh Mercy, and I think he was promoting a solo album of his own at this time as well. Okay, so this is the big feature, the big interview feature of this week's issue in the realm of the senses. So this is Kate Bush opening up about the new Sensual World album. It's a multi-page interview, as you can see. A few quotes in there. There's one interesting thing that I pulled out from this, which is that she wanted to use more of James Joyce's Ulysses lyrics in the Sensual World, the track itself, but was prevented from doing so by the publishers. So she basically had to kind of try and get the feeling she wanted, but with an entirely kind of rewritten set of lyrics, and had to completely rewrite the song basically. But there, that's quite interesting. Okay, let's keep going. And we're up to the single reviews. Okay, and single of the week this week is Jesus Loves You After the Love. So that was Boy George in his kind of post-culture club phase. Yeah, there's some other singles reviewed in there. The Orb's Loving You. I'm not sure if that's the really, really long version or not. Probably not if it's a single. Armageddon Days Are Here by The. And a whole bunch of pop. Bros, D-Mob, Rebel MC, The Jacksons, Belinda Carlisle. Yep. And on the facing page we have an interview with Joe Strummer, who I think was releasing a solo album, and interestingly enough was shortly about to appear in Mystery Train, the Jim Jarmusch movie. And yes, one of the big kind of look back interviews, this one with The Clash from April 1977. Lots of vintage photos and yeah, a nice feature if you're into The Clash. And it does continue over the page. And then we get to some interviews, again, some interview pieces, some of the smaller ones. First one with Roxanne Shante. You'll notice that they've got this little Rap Attack logo. I think that shows that, you know, the NME was still, even though it had kind of been quite brave up to this point by deciding to pin its colours to hip-hop and actually start putting hip-hop and rap on the cover, that it still didn't know quite how to package it for most of its audience. So hence this kind of helpful logo, just to remind you that you're reading something about hip-hop. Anyway, yes, that's Roxanne Shante, who was one of the kind of the earliest, or one of the first kind of female rappers to gain some kind of fame or attention during the mid-80s. And over the page, yeah, another Rap Attack logo there, just to warn you, in case you're a bit rap-averse, that this is a feature on EPMD. Yeah, another big East Coast hip-hop outfit of that kind of the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, they came from Long Island, so neighbours of Public Enemy. Yeah, they were one of the more inventive kind of sampling hip-hop groups of this period. I remember the track Strictly Business used Eric Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff quite a lot. Yeah, it was quite different from all the kind of the pretty basic disco and funk samples that a lot of early hip-hop artists had used. So yeah, EPMD, they were a pretty big deal at the time. Yeah. To the film, TV and radio. Okay, interviewing Michael Chiklis here, who was starring as Belushi in the Wired biopic, and a little feature there about Emily Lloyd. I guess he was most famous for the film Wish You Were Here, and she was starting to break out in some Hollywood roles. What else do we have here? The film reviews. Yeah, Eric the Viking, Wired. Oh, and Ariel there. Big shout out there for Aki Kaurismäki. A big fan of his films, the Finnish filmmaker. Yeah, Ariel there. Let's carry on. And yes, some more film, TV, radio, news, and the sound and vision section, which again gives you your rundown of what you could have seen this week in 1989 on TV or listened to on the radio. Of interest is normally the Peel sessions, which this week are The Family Cat, In Spiral Carpets, and A Guy Called Gerald. Okay. More ads, and then a compilation video in support of CND, nuclear disarmament. I never got that one, but looking down the list of artists on there, it looks like quite a good video. And on the facing page, yes, the start of the album reviews with straight in with the Wonder Stuff's Hup album. And this one is by Steve Lamacq. He gives them an 8. He was quite a big supporter of the Wonder Stuff and all these kind of the bands of this ilk at the time. I think Steve Lamacq does kind of over-egg the pudding slightly here. He describes them as the most exciting group on Top of the Pops since the Buzzcocks. Make of that what you will. But let's carry on with the reviews. Yeah, we got Tracy Chapman's Crossroads getting an 8. And then we have a breakdown of the albums of the month. So this would have been from the past month. So this would have been from September. So yeah, quite an interesting mix in there. There's not many lists where you'll get Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones being mentioned in the same breath as Jesus Jones and The Loft. But there you go. And moving on to some more album reviews. Yeah, we have the Blue Niles hats here getting a 9. A lot of people rave about this. I will admit I've never really got them myself, and I always think I should probably try again. So maybe I've got that 9 fresh in my mind. I should go and find a copy and give it a listen. And skimming through, yeah, a bunch of other kind of indie reviews. Spandau Ballet getting a 1, as you'd expect. Buffalo Tom at the end getting a 9 there. And over into the NME gig guide. Yeah, the usual rundown of what's on around the country. Which leads into quite an extended kind of live ads and gigs kind of set of pages here. I usually skip over these. See the wedding present there. Who else? The Wonder Stuff. Stone Roses, Alexandra Palace dates sold out there on the bottom left. The Sugar Cubes on tour there. Who else? Ian McCulloch with a big national tour for his debut album. And then over into, more tour news. Not really a lot there. Yeah, on the facing page we have Paradise, the dance music kind of feature, semi-regular feature. An interview there with DJ Derek May, I believe. Yeah, Derek May, who was kind of releasing under the Rhythm is Rhythm name at the time. Okay, over into the live reviews. Again, quite a short set of live reviews this time round. The get quite a bad review. They kind of gone off the boil a bit critically at this point. Who else? George Clinton, Primal Scream, Danny Wilson, 808 State. That's your lot for this week, yeah. Then an interview with the Wonder Stuff, who are obviously featured prominently on the cover, and their album was reviewed this week. And Miles Hunt of the band says the worst thing we ever did was sign to a major record company, so clearly happy with the way things were going. Moving on. Managers, yes. One of these occasional features again. This one's about Peter Jenner. Okay, next page. Public Enemy, yeah, the gossip, the tattle. Yeah, I don't really bother with that. It doesn't really have much relevance to us right now, does it? But it's there. And moving on again. The next set of pages, the usual cluster of the classifieds. This was then, and the crossword, which again I had a stab at. Let's move on again. And now we're into Fred Fact. Yep, the discography this week is the kind of the family tree of The Loft and the Weather Prophets, Wishing Stones, going as far as the Caretaker Race, which featured one of the guitarists from The Loft. Some of the letters this week. Someone's asking what happened to a flock of seagulls. They don't follow that up with the question, and why didn't it happen sooner, but never mind. And someone asked with some questions there about home taping. Is it legal to make a single copy for your own home use? The answer at the time was no, but don't worry, no one's going to do anything about it. And there on the facing page, the kind of the mail order ads. Brief shout out here for right in the middle, tiny little ad, Cordelia Records. I used to order stuff from Cordelia Records in Leicester. They ran a mail order business, and they also had their own kind of little mini label, which they released some terribly obscure stuff on. Bands like the Chrysanthemums and the Deep Freeze Mice. I remember them always trying to sell those records, along with all the other stuff in their catalogue. And here we go into the charts. Yeah. As ever, it seems to be, Right on Time was the #1 single in the UK. But the #1 album was Tears for Fears with their Seeds of Love album, which went straight in at #1. The indie charts, top indie single was WFL by the Happy Mondays. That knocked In Spiral Carpets off, I believe. And anything else of these charts of any interest? Oh, here's one that makes me feel old. In the video films, the #1 video film at that point in 1989 was Top Gun. Having recently watched the sequel all these years later, that makes me feel very old. And on to the final page, which is, as ever, the letters page. This week edited by James Brown. Yeah, the usual selection of moans, whines, jokes. There is one there. A response to Stephen Swell's, his review of the NWA album. So Velvet Fox in Lootland says, anyone who thinks NWA say motherfucker a lot obviously haven't been to Milton Keynes. And what better way to sign off on an issue of the NME from October the 7th of 1989. Hope you've enjoyed having a read through with me. See you next time.